today's session is going to be really exciting. So it seems like the word of the month or the season, if you want, is MCP. So we go through all those different phases of the AI revolution, if you want. And first it was generative AI, and everybody was talking about generative AI. And then agentic AI came in, and then everybody was like, you know, what is agentic? What does that mean? And so on. And now we got to the point where we're talking about MCP. And MCP is the new kid on the block, is basically allowing your large language models to communicate with other systems. So it's the APIs of your LLMs. And once you sort of understand its capability and what you can do with it and its power, then you realize that it's taking your AI capabilities into a completely different level, because now it's not just a matter of something that is deterministic or something that can understand the language or understand like natural language and do something about it or generate code for you, but it's actually understanding your intent in terms of what you want to do. And it's giving you a set of tools to go and do it in a system that is accessible outside of your large language model, which really takes it to a different level, especially if you know exactly who you want to call, which system you want to call, what information you want to retrieve, and how you want to deal with this. And then as we progress into the presentation, we're going to show you that we can get very specific over what that tool can do for you, or you can be very broad in terms of, hey, we want to leave it for interpretation for the large language model itself to know how to communicate with the destination server. So we usually talk about different levels of AI automation. If you've seen some of the keynote sessions at Ignite, for example, or Build, they've got those different levels where it starts with, level 1 is something a little bit more deterministic or something that is driven by very well-defined rules. As you go into a higher level is where natural language starts taking over. It allows you to do some interpretation, understand what the intent that you're trying to do, and then give you direction or try to answer those. And then you get to the third level, which is actually starting to talk to other systems and then broaden that horizon and then allow it to connect to other systems and analyze the data coming from other systems and bringing it back into your one location. And then a level 4 is where you start talking about AI capabilities that are there to retrieve, like come up with decisions that are stage gated by a human. And the level 5 that Microsoft doesn't talk about is the Skynet level, where you get there and then it makes the decisions for you, and then you have to be fast enough to stop it from doing something stupid. But that's for the future. And then, like as a community and as the people using those systems, they're not comfortable enough to allow it to be completely autonomous on autopilot. So I think this level is going to take a little bit of time to go. Anyway, within the context of what we're trying to do today, we're going to put it into sort of the context of the SDLC. So we all know and love the SDLC, where we go through analysis and design phases, and then we go through some development phases, we do some testing, and then we do a deployment, and then we go back into that loop of sort of business as usual maintenance, or we go back to A&D and then go through another iteration of what we're trying to do. So 2 parts to today's session. In the first part, Ina is going to show us how we can actually do the analysis and design powered by AI capabilities. And when I first had a conversation with Ina, so just a little bit of introduction. Ina is working for Capgemini. She's one of my colleagues. She is based in Brisbane, and she is her specialty is in finance and operation. But then when I was talking to her and I saw the passion in her voice in terms of what is the art of possible with all of the AI capabilities, I'm like, we need to have a session and talk about it together. And then she was explaining to me how, there's standard processes that are available out of the box that you can install in Azure DevOps that will tell you about everything that you can do within Dynamics 365 and then within the finance and operation, NCE as well. And then she said, what if we can get an AI model that can communicate with Azure DevOps, understand our requirements, and then help us with this A&D phase? And then she showed me some stuff that I always thought, wow, I thought this is sci-fi and it's not going to happen until a few years from now. But she showed me a live demo. I'm like, You need to show that to the community. So this is what Ina is going to cover. And then next, we're going to talk about the development phase, and this is where Clive is going to come in. Clive, I probably don't need to introduce you, but Clive is Auckland-based. He is one of the new additions to the New Zealand MVP community. He is the most technical person that I've worked with in this industry. So whenever I struggle with the technical questions, I have Clive on my speed dial. I give him a call and I'm like, hey, Clive, how do we do this? But he's going to show us basically, as you're progressing through your development and you need to communicate with Dynamics 365, how can you do that? Now, the one thing that really differentiates this session from the previous session that we've done is that in the past, we've used existing capabilities or existing MCP servers that will allow us to communicate with Dynamics 365. So I've done a session in the past where I talked about generating rules, for example, that would go from, hey, there's a requirement in ADO, understand what the requirement is, refresh the metadata that you've got, generate the rules that we need to do, and then go in and generate a unit test for it, and then push it into your environment. Now, I could only demonstrate the generate the rule engine and then pushing it into an environment because the MCP servers could only do reading and writing data to very limited number of tables and so on. Whereas if this doesn't exist, then that's fine. You can go build your own MCP server to do whatever you want. As long as there's an API in there, you can wrap it up with MCP capabilities. And this is where Clive's demo is going to come in and show us what's possible. Now, if you go to mcp.so, there is actually a bunch of MCP servers that are generated by people where you can just go and understand what is that doing and then download it. Now, notice there's like, this one right there, the Playwright MCP, which is probably an interesting one to have in a topic, in a future topic, to see how we can, because Playwright is basically the new tool that will allow you to do automated testing for Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. So there's an MCP server for that. So that will be really interesting to see in the SDLC, once we've done the build, how we can actually go into test mode using AI capabilities. So going back to Clive's part of the presentation, he's going to show us how you can actually go and communicate with your environments, whether they do have an out-of-the-box MCP server, an official one, or whether you want to build your own one, and how far we can go with that capability. So I probably did a very bad job of sort of introducing the two topics, but hopefully Ina and Clive can do a much better job than me presenting that. So I'm going to hand over to you, Ina, just to start with the ADO story, and then just give us a bit of background of what you tried to do, and show us what's the art of possible.
Thank you. So I'll share my screen. I don't have a lot of slides, so let me start with just a quick introduction. So the idea, what I want to present to you is a future vision, maybe an inspiration for you to try yourself. I see some people on the call that already tried what I want to show you, so very keen to hear your feedback. I think, Danya, I saw your video on that on YouTube. Basically, what I want to achieve is to accelerate our analysis and design phase, to help the consultants on the functional side to document the requirements and to bring them in a very consistent way with acceptance criteria, with basically definition of done already embedded in the description of the requirement, to make it easier for the consultant to finish the job and also to hand over to the customer for approval, and then later to be ready for developer to develop it if it's needed. So I have a couple of, I will start with one demo before I go to and explain your concept so you understand better what I mean. I will share this other screen. So what you see on the screen here is I have opened an Azure DevOps requirement. So it's a work item of type scenario, and I'll explain later where it comes from. And it has a short description here. On the other side of the screen, I have opened GitHub Copilot chat. Okay, so mind me, this is for people who are functional and they are not technical. This is all possible to set up without too much hassle. So after I done initial setup, and there is enough documentation, also can provide a link of how to set it up. I can connect my chat to Azure DevOps, and I can ask in natural language information about work items in DevOps, but I can also update or apply some actions on DevOps item. And why I need this, I'll show you in the next step when I describe the vision or the idea of how can this be applied holistically for analysis and design phase. So just to show you how this interacts with Azure DevOps. So you see I have asked a question, what is this work item? It gives me some details. And I can do many different things inside this chat by just typing in natural language. For example, update application family. So this is this field here, application family field to finance and operations apps. This is to show you that from the chat, we can access data in Azure DevOps and update it. So it will work a little bit. And we'll update this field automatically without me switching the window. So it did. Now I have a requirement here. Now I can ask it, rewrite description to be more specific for D365 F&O. So now it will update my description here. So I can add other things like, for example, adding acceptance criteria, which I'll do in the next step after it's completed updating. So the update, this description was updated. Now I can say add acceptance criteria in bullet points in the end of the description. So these are just some examples. There are way more other actions that we can apply. So the last one I will show that I can modify a status and I can assign it to myself. Change status to active and assign to me. Yeah, so it assigned to my name and it changed the status. So this can be done to multiple work items at once as well. So now I was thinking, how can we apply this great functionality to our analysis and design phase? So in Azure DevOps, okay, let me move this here and then open full screen. In Azure DevOps, I have uploaded Microsoft Business Process Catalog. You can see it on the screen. It's available for free and it covers all Dynamics 365 processes for finance and operations apps and for CE, customer engagement apps as well. So it's also for field service, also for sales, also for customer service and so on. I'll show you a couple of examples. For order to cash, for example, I have manage sales orders. And I can show you under enter sales orders, we have all standard processes for commerce, for supply chain, but also for sales, so for CRM as well. And the idea is that we start a project, we use this process library to document everything that's on scope, in scope, out of scope, and then adjust our requirements with descriptions as we go. So now the idea that I have, and I think where the future is going, is that we can plan our design workshops based on this end-to-end process catalog. For example, we work in sprints in our design phase, and we have 1 week or 2 weeks per end-to-end process. And during this end-to-end process, we cover everything that's in the library, and we discuss all of these things, and we decide which ones we keep in scope, which one out of scope, and what the exact requirements are. And during workshops, we can have our teams recordings, writing the transcript. And then after the transcript is saved to SharePoint, we can use this as context for our GitHub Copilot, except the transcript will need additional instructions. So my idea is that we'll provide instructions such as how to describe requirements in correct way. So like instructions of what makes a good requirement description. The same for acceptance criteria. So what do we need to describe acceptance criteria? How do they need to look like? Another context that we can provide is how to create test cases, because in Azure DevOps, we can create also test cases using GitHub Copilot, and it creates new work items and adds them as linked child items to the requirement. So we provide all of these instructions. Also, there is a MCP server for Microsoft Learn, so it can get information about standard description. So we provide all of these inputs first, and then after we have set up our GitHub Copilot, so I did it in Visual Studio Code and connected with Azure MCP server, connected with the Azure DevOps project. So the flow would be that we save the recording from our workshop, and workshop is based on one of these end-to-end processes, for example, order to cache. The GitHub Copilot will pull that information from the transcript, and we can ask it to map what we discussed in the workshop in the transcript to the existing requirements in the library and populate those description based on the instruction that we provided. And after it was done, so we have the description, we have the acceptance criteria, it can be assigned to the consultant, and the status can be changed to active. So this means we always keep the human in the loop, and the human will validate whatever AI has generated and then assign it to the customer for approval. So this is basically the concept, and I tried a lot of things. I uploaded the transcript. It does map to requirements. And I think at this point, the USP that we can bring as SIs or as partners is how well we guide the workshops, how well we ask questions in the workshops, how well we provide instructions on what a good requirement looks like, what acceptance criteria look like, how test cases look like. We can provide all of this as our internal IP, and then use Azure DevOps, MCP Server, and GitHub Copilot to accelerate our work. Yeah, and the slides that I provided, we can share them later, but it's basically a summary of what I already described. So I
Sounds
think
good.
I can handle
That's really
what
good,
you...
Dina. Yes. So just a couple of things that I wanted to reiterate. One of the things that I really like in your message is teaching AI in terms of what does a consistent output look like, which is very important. Like you would give it directions, you would give it structure, so that it knows exactly that when you want to write your acceptance criteria, you want to write your your user stories and whatever, or even the testing, that it will be done in a very specific way, so that you have that consistency. And yes, the human in the loop is very important as well, so that you know exactly. You make sure it doesn't hallucinate, it doesn't give you information that is going sideways or whatever. The other thing that I really enjoyed is the fact that you can control the statuses of your user stories. And I think this is very important, because to me, in an agentic world where really you've got agents in the background listening to what's happening, you would all go to a record, you go and say, all right, we'll update it to be in a specific format. And once this is done and you're happy with it, you would say something like dev ready. And then the moment it goes dev ready, then there's another agent waiting to listen to that dev ready instruction and go, yep, I'm going to pick that one up and I'm going to start implementing it myself. Almost like, Satya Nadella was demonstrating I think it was at Build earlier this year, he was demonstrating a demo where there was a defect that is assigned to him. And he's like, oh, agent, go and fix it for me. And it's exactly that. There's an agent waiting for this to happen and then go and submit this information.
Tanya, you had a question?
Yeah, that was really good. Do we have time for question, or we do it later?
Yeah, go ahead. We've got time.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I was not aware. I mean, Because using GitHub Copilot, like I never thought about going that route. Like I always try to, because I also try to interact with Azure DevOps, with Copilot Studio, and it's all kind of limitations. But yeah, it's quite interesting. So how did you install the MCP server in your Copilot in GitHub? Is it straightforward or is it more technical? Like how does that work?
Yeah, so the history behind this is I tried to look outside the box, so I'll try a bit earlier, and I sometimes attend some events that other ERP providers have. And I attended one where I presented AI inside Jira. So Jira is like DevOps, and they have AI already as part of, you can use it to summarize comments, you can use it to split the requirements in multiple ones to generate acceptance, all of this. And I was searching for this for Azure DevOps. So where is it? Like Copilot is everywhere, but not in DevOps. Yeah. So I put that question on Yammer, and there's one guy I know from Germany. He said, "Oh, Azure DevOps MCP server." And then it's like, okay, so I start searching for that, and I found there are many links online on how you set it up in GitHub Copilot. I can share my screen, and I'll share also a link of how I did it, which instruction I followed. But basically, it's Visual Studio Code. Yeah. And you need to install a couple of things. So there is Azure MCP server. There is also that you need to install. There is also GitHub Copilot chat that you need to install. And then there are some other prerequisites, like 5 things that you need to install: Node.js, JS, and Azure CLI. And and then I used just my work account. We have Azure subscription. I think most of you have. So that's the only thing I needed, and nothing special, just a GitHub account. And I logged in and provided just a copy paste of this snippet of code. It connected here to the organization, and then I started chatting here. And because I am on the functional side, and this can overwhelm a functional person, so I just said open chat in the new window, and I just use this to remove the noise. And then and then I just ask it. And there is a section here with all the tools that you can use, including ADO. There are so many for developers as well, but also a lot for like functional side with work item types, add query, get work item type, all of this stuff.
Yep.
And I should have probably to set up.
Yeah, I should have started with that. So Ina is a functional person, and she did all of that by herself. And then she showed me how it's working. I'm like, wow, that's pretty impressive. And then I think like the message here is that it's actually not very difficult to set it up. There's lots of material available online that can help you sort it. And the secret sauce around it is just to make sure that you set up your mcp.json file. And again, it's a copy paste of the connection. And Ina, I think once you set it up, the first time it's going to ask you to log in, or did you use Azure login on the CLI? I can't remember. Yeah. And then once that was out of the way, then that's it. You're connected and everything is working. Yeah, really straightforward. Hamish, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome. A really good demonstration. And Danny and I have been talking about this quite a lot in the background. And like my dream would be to build a Copilot agent, right, that goes and grabs your transcripts automatically, so you're not having to manually take transcripts. It just looks at your team's meetings and goes, "Hey, we discussed these requirements today. Go and update them." This is where I'm not very technical, but do we know, I can build a Copilot, can configure a Copilot agent, right? But would it be difficult to get this MCP server available to Copilot Studio? Is it?
I think that's possible. And I think this is the direction that Microsoft is taking in terms of making all of the MCP capabilities available within Copilot Studio, and then using the agentic side of Copilot Studio, as you mentioned, like where there's one that is just waiting for an event to happen, and then go and trigger and then go and do the work for you. That's definitely where like how Microsoft wants to set things up and then get you to use that, because again, it's just the APIs of large language models, right? So that's the idea behind it.
Yeah, Yeah. So it'd just be so good, to have it hook into Copilot Studio, because then you can just, you can
Definitely.
get it to do all sorts of things, right? Listen for your team's meetings, listen to all sorts of different signals from different areas, right?
Definitely, yeah. And that's something that I was telling Ina, is that the GitHub Copilot, a lot of people cringe when they see it because they think code, they think customization. Now, Ina took the leap and she's like, oh, this is easy. Like, there's nothing to be worried about. But, to your point, Hamish, a lot of people would rather either for it to be completely agentic, where there's an agent listening and doing it, or to have a more user-friendly interface. And I think this will be coming either within, like the way I see it is that either like you can build your own friendly user interface that can be BYO whatever you want from a work management perspective, like Jira or Azure DevOps, and from a source control repository, and then just give you a very user-friendly interface that is driven by agentic capabilities and MCP connections and all of that, where you literally just converse with it. And you say, right, like, let's have a look at this epic. And then it loads the stories. And then you can say, all right, let's work on those stories, and then assign those to this person who's capable of doing, custom development, or this person that can do testing. And then like get the support that you need to progress through the SDLC. And like, as Satya Nadella would say, the world of SaaS is dead, because now the future is going to be agentic. I see it as going to be all driven by this AI productivity increases, where you just interact with it, you tell it what you want, and it will support you. And all you're doing is just managing all of that. And in fact, sometimes I put that into practice, although it's not a very well-oiled machine and can do everything. But I can say that about 60 to 70% of my workload is done by AI, because I've taught it, I sort of tuned it, I've given it all the information that it needs. Anything that I can put in a rule or in a set of instructions, AI can do it for me, right? And that really, like, once you get it done and then it starts working, as Ina said, you do it in Jira, and then you can already do some AI capabilities. You go back to Azure DevOps, you're like, I don't want to use that anymore because it doesn't have the AI capabilities. So nowadays, if AI is not enabled by default, you're like, I don't want to use that. I'll go to the next one that has that capability. So yeah, interesting future. Danny, over to you.
Oh, look, no, I wanted to comment a bit more and have a discussion, but maybe that's not the right. I mean, there's plenty more that you need to demo, right? So
yeah,
that's fine.
All right. Sounds good. And I love the discussions. I think this is really like, bringing all of those things to life. But yeah, conscious of time, we've got half an hour left. So Clive, if you want to share your bit and then walk us through your ideas.
Sure thing. Okay, we'll get started. I'll just quickly start with some slides. So basically, I'm just going to explain some things about MCP. What is it? A lot of people online describe it as like USB-C for agents. I like to think more of it as the whole cable. It's both ends. It's the way that you connect on the one side. It's the way you communicate from the one connector to the other. It's the way that you connect on the other side. What does it stand for? It's the Model Context Protocol. So it's an open standard for connecting language models to tools. So there's two parts. There's the MCP client. And so like with the demo before, it's things like the GitHub Copilot chat, it's Copilot Studio, and then there's the MCP server. And then so that's the side that's providing the tools. Things like Claude Desktop, Copilot Studio. So the server provides, it's a server that runs code and it provides tools using the MCP spec. And so the server could be in any language. It could be C#, Python, JavaScript, Java, whatever. They typically come in two flavors. So you get remote MCP servers, and they would be a web application that use HTTP and SSE to do the communication, or you get local MCP servers, and so those communicate using standard I/O. Some of them require authentication, so typically the remote servers would have OAuth using JWT tokens or something like that to control what you can do with the underlying tools and how you prove who you are. I've got a short example of the comparison between the two, so you can see the did I just cut out? So the communication types. So with the local one versus the remote one, it's using network based. The local one, you can only connect one client to it, whereas with the remote one, hundreds of people could be connecting to it. The authentication, there's no authentication for the local one, so it's really easy to set up. It's got very low latency because it's working right on your device, right next to the other thing that's the client that's trying to consume it. And it's very reliable. What I'll do now is I will switch over to just a quick example of what does the MCP, what does the agent actually see? So a lot of people are concerned about, I'm going to be using these agents and I'm going to give them these tools and they're going to have access to everything that is behind there. They're going to have access to my tokens. They're going to be able to, Anthropic's going to steal all of my data. And so with MCP, it's really cool because it kind of puts the control to you. So the agent, to the agent, just open this one actually, agent visibility. So the agent, what it sees is the tools are basically like a black box. It just gets a spec. It says, and the client tells the agent, oh yeah, I've got these tools. I've got an echo tool. It takes parameters. Here's a description of what it does, and the agent sees nothing but that. And so this information is passed to the agent or to Anthropic server where they run the agent with my prompt. So I'll pass my prompt, and then all of these tools come as basically like a set of instructions of things that can be done when the agent decides to respond back to the client. I'll show you my first prompt. So my demo is going to be showing a custom MCP server running with C#. I set it up using, can you see that? Hopefully you can. There was a blog from one of the guys from .NET, and I basically went to agent mode in VS Code and I said, here's this blog. Build my first server in this folder. And it went through and it created the project and it added all of the packages that were required. It created a program class file with some initial code. It built first time, took about 2 minutes, and I had my first running MCP server. So I'll show you how simple it is. It's just an SDK style project. It's got very minimal dependencies. It's got like 3-4 dependencies. It's got Azure Identity. That's one of the key ones for how I manage my authentication to some of my tools. And then it's got the preview of the model context protocol library. And I'll show you the program that it started with. It's about 30 lines of code. So it's extremely simple, right? So it's got some usings. It's built a client. It runs in the background, and it's got this class file here where it's an echo tool. And the way that the IDE and the MCP server finds my tools is it's looking for these annotations at the top of the class to dictate that this class has tools in it, And then these are the tools. So I've got a tool, and it's an echo tool, takes a string and does some manipulation and returns a string back. I've got another echo tool that takes a string and it reverses that string. And so you can see it's really simple from the beginning. One thing that it also added for me was this MCP JSON. You would have seen that in Ina's example as well. This is how it kind of binds everything together. So this is the configuration to tell my GitHub Copilot that there's a standard IO type MCP server. You can find it here on my laptop. It's a CS Proj, and it's as simple as that, right? And to get everything started, you just need to click start. And so that's going to go along and run this project, this DLL. It's going to load it up, get it going. And if I go more and go show output, you can see here that it's started. So my MCP server started. And something that's really good about this when I'm running it locally is because it's running custom code and things can sometimes go wrong, I can add information, I can add tracing, I can debug my MCP server all from the output that is happening here in these windows. So I'll show you the chat. So it's very much the same. And just like before, we have the tools icon, and you can see below the built-in, I've got a few MCP servers. I've got the Microsoft Docs one, it's a really good one, and then my first MCP. And so you can see it's got all of these tools. It's got echo, it's got reverse echo. So that all matches everything that's in my class file for these annotations with these methods that I've bound. So I can give an example. I could say something like, echo this sentence. And so that message, that prompt, and what the agent sees, which is that specification about these are all of the methods and this is the description about them and this is how you call them. You can see here it's ran my echo and the output is hello from C#. So hello from C# got echoed back to me. So you can see very simply how this has taken a prompt, it's run some custom C# code that's running on my laptop, and then the agent was then able to interact with that. So once I got that going, I decided I've been using the Microsoft Dataverse client and their MCP server, and I love it. It's great. But at the moment, it's still in preview, and it's got lots of limitations. And so that frustrated me a bit, because every time I tried to do something that I wanted to do with it, I kind of hit a bit of a barrier. So I decided to make a client for Dataverse. And with the Dataverse one, the OData, the web API that Microsoft provide for Dataverse, it can do everything that you can do in the front end in Dataverse, right? It can create records, it can delete records, it can get pretty much any table, it can do everything that you can do on the front end inside Dataverse, the Dataverse web API can do. So I decided to make a few wrappers to do some of the things that I might want to do regularly with the web API. So one of the limitations that they currently have is you can't execute actions. And so I decided I want to try, maybe I could do an action. Let me just try find my terminal. So the way that I do authentication in my Dataverse client is I use something called default Azure credentials. I think I'll have it here. And basically that's a Microsoft library that they provide. And it goes through like a sequence of trying to get a token. And so if it's hosted in Azure, it'll use potentially managed identity, or it'll use the environment variables, or it'll use whatever it can get as it goes down the chain of different ways of authenticating. And the way that I'm doing it locally is Azure Login. So I go to the terminal, I do Azure Login, it'll pop my browser, and then I choose which account I want to use. So the nice thing about this is it means I can quickly swap from whichever account or whichever tenant I want to get a token for. With the other client with the Microsoft provided one is you need to create a connection in the Maker portal, and you have to configure that in the MCP server, and then you have to have an MCP. You basically have a separate one for every environment. Whereas mine, it logs into a tenant, and then it can get a token for any environment I want. So it's a little bit more flexible in that sense. And so one of my examples with being able to call a custom API is we have a thing called I'm Ready at one of the customers we work on, and it basically lets somebody get something from a queue, picks a queue item from the queue for them. And so you can see here I've got some items in the queue, and nobody's working on them. And so I could come back here and say, I'm ready. Let's hope that actually works. Oh, you can see I stuffed that up a little bit, right? But because these agents are quite good at kind of sifting through the noise, it figured out that the and say is irrelevant. I'm just going to call the tool I'm ready. So that is because it's like you stuff things up and it still does what you want. But it also leaves that kind of little bit of room for interpretation where it can go a bit haywire. And so you can see it's called one of my tools that I have here in my program. So I've got I'm ready, call I'm ready, and it just calls the web API, calls a custom action, and cool, it says it's done, and it's given me a hyperlink to that record in my environment. Something that I should preface with this is I've given some context. So I've kind of said in my instructions, oh, hey, by the way, I've got some dev environments. And here's the URLs for them. So my tool accepts the org URL. So I could say, use this environment. But if I don't say that, I've put instructions in here to say, hey, look, this is my dev, my UAT, and my prod. And if I don't ask for anything, it'll just default to the dev environment. It kind of figures that out for itself. And so if I go back here to my environment, you'll see, oh, I'm now working on this work item. And so it's picked that up from the queue for me from that message. And then I can do things like I could say, run I'm ready twice. And then so with like traditional programming, you have to do all of this stuff where it's like, I'm going to do a for loop, I'm going to have a collection, I'm going to iterate over all of these bits in the collection. I've got to program that control flow. But with this, I just say it. I don't have to write code to go along and do that. I can just dictate it. Cool, it's run I'm ready twice. And if I refresh here, now I'm working on everything. Yeah, so that is just a small example of me creating a tool that's kind of in this little sliver. So like the thing that I'm a little bit hesitant about with some of these is it's like, I'm gonna connect MCP and it's gonna be able to update every single record inside my Dataverse environment. And it's like, I don't want it to go haywire and delete all of my data or update all of my contacts to Bob or and to try and restrict that, you can do role-based access and you can do all of these things, but then that just comes at a bit of a barrier, right? So the nice thing about rolling your own tools is you can kind of control the scope of what it's allowed to do. So my next example is running things across a whole bunch of my environments. So I can got one here. So I'm just going to ask it to get all of get the users with the name Clive in all of my environments and give me a list as a table. So it's something I do quite often. I need to go compare some data between all of my environments, right? So I need to check whether the GUID of the queue is the same in dev, test, and production, or I need to do something, some data analysis across a whole bunch of environments, but it's a bit onerous me logging in and going to that table and finding the right record, and so that it takes time, right? But now I can kind of sift through that just by asking things. I can ask it to go spend its time iterating over my environments to find the information that I'm looking for. So you can see it's run it 3 times from dev, from my other dev environment, from my other dev environment, and it's figured out, like I just said users with the name Clive, and it's decided to do a contains full name Clive. So it's used a little bit of that flexibility that I was talking about before to kind of to guess at what I'm trying to achieve, the intent that I'm looking for. And if I look at the output, it's found 4 users, one, my Capgemini one, deactivated, we won't talk about that, and then the 3 active Clives in my environments and their GUIDs. So I can see, the GUID of the user is different in each environment. So it's done that analysis for me and then given me a little report about, I've gone and found that for you. So this can be really useful when you're trying to if I've got a record and I'm looking for the records in the subgrid, but I don't have the columns I need in that subgrid, I can get this to build a subgrid on the fly just from me talking to it, right? So another example kind of like this is quite often we'll have things like flows that get turned off. So I can just say get the status of flows that are in my solutions. So I've told it, my solutions will have the publisher prefix CO. So that's one of my instructions. So it knows that those are the kinds of solutions I'm looking for. Look for solution components in Clive's solutions. And so the first thing it did was it went and tried to find all of my solutions. So it's found I've got several solutions in my dev environment. The second thing it did was it's looking for the flows, solution component type 29, in each one of the solutions that have the GUID of one of my solutions. And then it did a query. That's it, yeah. And then within that response, it has the status of all of my flows. So I've got 4 flows in my demo solution, and they're all active. And then so something that often happens is we'll do a deployment and all the flows are off, and everyone's like, things are broken, what's going on? So now I can just, if somebody says, something's broken in the test environment, I can just go, are the flows on and test, and ask the agent. The agent goes away, does a few iterations, comes back and says, the flows are on or they're off. And then so I've made another tool, so kind of like the previous one where I'm calling an action, I can say, deactivate the first 2. And so that's going to go along and find my tool to activate or deactivate flows. And because I said the first 2, it's the run as and the key vault secret one. And you can see here it's running a tool called activate workflow. It's passed the GUID that it retrieved from the previous request and set the Boolean activate to false. It's going to take a little bit of time. Cool. It thinks it's done that one. And it's going to run the second one. Cool. So it thinks it's done them both. And then now just to be sure, I can just ask the previous one, get the status of the flows again. So I could put this into instructions. I could say, here's a workflow that I want to do where it's every time I ask you to activate a flow, go do a second check. Go make sure you actually did what I asked you to do. And so it's done less iterations. So it ran the previous query again. And you can see it's given me feedback. These 2 flows are now off, and they've just been modified for 51. So that was the next one I was playing around with. Okay, the last one is what I'll do is I'll stop this. Is an example where so quite often we will. This is one of the first ones I tried, actually. It was another thing that you can't query in the Microsoft MCP server is plugin traces. That it's like a restricted table for the read query for whatever reason. And that's kind of something that I have to go to quite often. I've got to open X from Toolbox, and I've got to get the plugin trace viewer, and I've got to query the table, and I've got to try sift through to try and find my plugin, find the exception for it. And so in here you can see, I'll just turn the server on. So I've turned it on. Make sure. It's always good to be double sure. Yeah. And so I can, so like I get a defect, right? And somebody says this plugin has thrown an exception. So I'll go to the plugin that's a problem. And I can say, I've had reports that this plugin is erroring today. Please check the plugin traces, filter for this plugin, and help me identify what might be the cause. And so this is going to use one of the tools that I've made, which is the Get Plugin Trace tool. It's a really simple tool. It's just got the URL, a filter, and how many traces I want to get. So you can see it's figured out from the context, and I'm in this plugin, the demo contact parent tracer plugin. And so it's decided, oh, I'm going to filter by this plugin name. And you can see it's got some responses from the environment. And then based on those responses, it can read the stack trace, it can read the tracing, and it can figure out what's wrong with my plugin. I look here, and it's the root cause analysis was, so I got a given key not present in the dictionary. That's right. There was a given key not present in the dictionary exception with this line, because I was referencing a field and an object and didn't do a null check. And then it's gone a step beyond what I actually asked. I didn't ask it to fix the plugin. I just said, what's wrong with my plugin? And it's actually fixed the plugin for me. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool that it could kind of jump that barrier that I currently have. Like currently I have to go find the plugin traces. I've got to copy the exception. I've got to come here. I've got to, like back in the day, I would go manually try and figure out, oh, what does this exception mean? What line has it got up to? Nowadays, well, before this, I would copy and paste it into Copilot chat and say, oh, can you figure out what's going on? Now I don't even need to copy and paste. Now I just say, it's broken, help. Yeah. And I think that I will just mention, I got carried away. I started going down a rabbit hole. This always happens when Rami suggests, you should do a session on something. And then I find like my kids haven't been fed for a week, and like I'm growing a beard, as you can tell. Like I was clean shaven before Rami suggested this. Yeah, I'd also started doing a DevOps one because I can authenticate to DevOps as well in the same way using default Azure credentials. So I was like, oh, look, I can get it to do my pull requests for me. I can get it to deploy from dev to test for me. I can get it to do my whole day job. I can go chill in Bali. But yeah, that's where I got to.
It is really powerful, and like I love the enthusiasm. Like, you know, the moment you start, you're like, oh man, there's so much that I can do with that, and you just really don't want to stop, because as you're going through the different options and the different integrations, then you realize that you can do more and more and more. And I guess I think as you mentioned, you know, as you were presenting, you said, if I had to do that manually, that would take me ages, and it's so mundane and repetitive and so on. Why can't an agent do it for me? And again, it goes back into, if there's an API where you can do it in some shape or form, if there is you can put it in rules, or you can explain it to the agent in terms of give it instructions or a prompt in terms of what it needs to do to get it to do it accurately, and then give it enough direction and consistency, then it will start to do your job for you and then help you in that space. And again, it's one of those things where, like, the more I use it, the more my portfolio of AI capabilities are improving, or AI agents that do the work on my behalf are improving. And that becomes our secret sauce. Like, you go to a lawyer, for example, and then you say, hey, can I have a will? And then they whip up a will within 5 minutes, and then they'll charge you $1,000 for it. And you're like, what the hell? Just took you 5 minutes. They're like, yeah, but it took us ages to get that format and that, you know, content and everything perfected so that we can do it in 5 minutes. And I think this is where our craft is going, is that the more you spend sort of understanding how AI can help you with your productivity, can help you with your, you can perfect your prompts. That becomes your arsenal of tools that you can use on a day-to-day basis. And I guess what was really important about the session today is just to give you all those nuts and bolts, as you said, Clive, like all those ingredients that put together as a recipe will give you a fantastic meal and will allow you to build one element of the SDLC. So we saw with Ina how we started with analysis and design, and with Clive was more focused on the build and maybe beyond build, like, by doing pull request or looking at, the trace plugin trace logs and understand that there's an error in here, and then be able to feed that back into the development cycle to fix a problem that is available in production. That becomes very, very powerful. And AI becomes infused in every single aspect of the SDLC. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to what the future has hidden for us. And again, we're just starting the surface, right? So MCP is the new kid on the block. It's something that is relatively sort of under development, and then Microsoft is investing quite a lot in ensuring that the majority of their capabilities have out-of-the-box AI service, MCP servers that can be used. So really interesting.
I'll add one more. So another one that I forgot to mention was I've been playing around with this one where it's like helping me do OData queries, because what I built was just a wrapper for the web API. Sometimes it can be quite frustrating for people to try and figure out how to do a Power Automate flow and how to do an expand 4 tables deep and how to do filter on the parent record. So that's another one that I started playing around with, where it's like using one of these other tools, like the Microsoft Docs one. You can just be like, go read the Microsoft documentation about how to do a web API query, and then you figure out how to do the OData filter, and then you test it against my environment to make sure that we get the right response. And then I just copy and paste that into the flow. And so that one is quite good. And another thing that I'll mention is what's pretty useful with this is if you see it iterating a lot, like you might ask it to do something the first time and it's kind of average, right? Like it takes 50 attempts to get to the right output. Go along and feed that, like give it feedback about that and say, hey, can you actually update my instructions about this experience we just had? And remind yourself next time not to try and do it too lower in an OData query. Like make yourself better by documenting the things that didn't work and what did work. And then you'll find that slowly, like what you were saying earlier, Rami, like as you start working on this, it just gets better. It just keeps getting more and more competent, and it uses less tokens, it does less iterations, and it starts. So like this one where I'm saying, give me an OData query to find all of the contacts filtered by my parent account, like Acme, then expand onto the parent account to get the contact, the primary contact name and number. And you can see it's like, it's done it perfectly first time. So it's given me the filter, the select, it's given me how to do an expand, how to do the filter on the expand. Yeah.
Yeah. What you said is really interesting, because I think this is the new secret sauce, is the self-learn of your prompt. So it does it the first time and it realizes that the original prompt was actually not very accurate as it learned more in terms of how to do things and as you gave it direction. And it will take that feedback and go back and update the prompt. And the more you use it, the more refined that prompt is going to be. And as you said, it will be more accurate. It will use less tokens. It will give you the response significantly faster. And that's something that I've noticed, like playing around with the private previews of the MCP servers. Like one of the things in some of the new capabilities, and I think that was announced, is that they're going to allow you to do schema changes as it, they enhance the capabilities of MCP. And I was like, okay, can you go and create a table for me? But then it said it queried the table rather than creating the table. So it, did something wrong. But again, by feeding it more specific instructions and better prompts, it managed to do that. And yes, Clive, so I've used Plan Designer as well, or Power Plan. I'm not sure what is the latest name for the capability now, but I just don't like the way it's doing things, because it's not how I do it. And a very good example is like when I create a choice column, for example, I want it to be a global choice, but it always creates it as a local one. And that annoys me. So instead, what did I do? I created my own MCP server that would create a global choice, because this is available as an API call, and I just wrapped it within the MCP call. And now in GitHub Copilot, I go and say, hey, there's a requirement over there that says go and create a table for me that has all those attributes. And by the way, one of them is a choice. And if you get to a choice, make sure you create it as a global choice. It knows exactly what tools are available within your MCP server and how to create that, and it gets to the choice and it generates it as a global one, making it more aligned with the way you do your development and having to do less rework as it generates the work for you. So yeah, really exciting stuff. Just conscious that we're slightly over time. Any final questions? I don't know if Danny or Hamish are still on the call, but anything else anybody wants to add?
Hi, Rami. A quick question regarding, so Clive, you mentioned about this query where you asked the prompt to check the doc. Is it all documented in your instruction MD, or how does it flow from one server to another?
So how it flows from, so it's running here.
Yeah, so you mentioned when you asked to create OData, you did say that it would have asked to read or understand from the Microsoft doc and then bring up the OData query, right? So is it how you put in the instruction, like go look, is it in the Copilot instruction MD, or is it somewhere else?
Oh, it's just like this. So you can say you can say use Microsoft Docs. Where is it? Use hashtag Microsoft Docs to learn about Dataverse Web API OData query, and then try ... with my MCP server.
And you can put that in your prompts, right?
Just in the prompt directly, yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it's part of the instruction, or should it go to the instruction, or should it go to the actual chat?
No, but you could put that in the instructions as well, right? So you could say, if you're ever going to try and do something like open-ended, where we're trying to figure out how to do something, use check Microsoft Docs before we try and do it. Don't use your outdated information from when your model was trained 2 years ago. Use the latest information from Microsoft to then figure out how to do the thing we're trying to do.
Yep.
This Microsoft Docs one is really, I like it.
Yeah.
Really good.
And another good example is when I want to write JavaScript, for example, and the JavaScript is going to be dependent on a schema. So my prompt will say, go and connect to ADO using this MCP tool, retrieve the story that is marked as ready for development, then connect to the Dataverse MCP to go and understand the schema of the table in question. And now that it understands what the schema is, and potentially even read the form XML to understand what is on the form, then generate the JavaScript to do X, Y, and Z that is reusing a utility library that I've created. And then all it's doing is just plugging and playing, like just filling the blanks, basically. Like I know what that utility does because I read the JavaScript file, and I know exactly, like it's very well documented because it was vibe coded, but I know exactly what it's doing. It's requiring, this schema name to be entered in here. And then based on what I can read from the Dataverse schema, I know what it's called, and it just plugs it all together, and then it starts working. And then Ash, the next part is, okay, well, now that we've done that, can you unit test it for me? And then it goes and then generates a unit test, maybe using the Playwright MCP, and then generates the content for us. So yeah, really exciting stuff.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Clive. Thanks,
Cool.
Rami.
Awesome. Any final questions? All good.
Maybe just one question, sort of following on from Ash's question. In that example there, where you're talking about connecting to using MCP to connect to the Microsoft Learn documentation to learn more about the latest in OData, any thoughts or any experimentation been done on creating a custom model which has been specifically trained on like the latest information around, say, OData and the web APIs and Dynamics and the Power Platform in general, so that the model that's being used to orchestrate this has that information already, and you don't have to, because I assume in this case, anytime you would want it to do an OData query, you're potentially getting it to use that MCP server and consume those tokens, whereas can you have a custom model to help reduce that overhead as these get more complicated?
I've never tried that. I've never trained my own model or anything. I think it's one of those things where it's the power, like you see it with the models that don't have quite as many parameters and stuff. Like they might be faster and they can run on less hardware, but then they don't have that broad skill set, right? They don't have like the wealth of knowledge that the bigger models do. Yeah, I'm not sure. Rami, you played around a bit with that, didn't you?
Yeah, but I didn't get it to train as per Luke's example. So like the reason why I like using Claude is because it's quite good at anything to do with programming. So when I'm telling it format something in JSON or even to a certain extent, like use the standard OData and generate like a query for me, then it knows how to do that. But to be specific to the Dynamics ways of doing things, I haven't tried to train it. And even like when I was talking about the utility library that I've got, it usually reads the file and then learns it on the fly and then decides what to do with it. So it is a bit time consuming and like it consumes tokens, but yeah, I haven't tried to train the model from scratch so that it knows it and it has it in its sort of model itself and knows how to do it. But yeah, like there's definitely a way of doing it, but I haven't tried that before.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much, Ina, for giving us this insights in terms of how to use it in the context of FNO and also Azure DevOps. And Clive, thank you very much for showing us how you can build your own MCP server and then like the extent in which you can get it to do things on your behalf and how it can be trained to do all of that work. So hopefully people from the community found that useful. I will be downloading the content now that I remembered to record it from the beginning. So this is all good. And I'll publish it onto our YouTube channel so that we have a reference for people that want to see it offline. So thank you very much, guys, for attending and hope to see you next month.